Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share insights on what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumey, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have Paul Rocchio, Vice President of Development and Member Services at the International Franchise Association. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Frank. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for this opportunity, my friend. I know we've been trying to do this. I wish I was down in Tampa in person with you, but maybe we could do that some other time. But thank you so much, buddy. Appreciate it.
Oh, Paul, it is my pleasure to have you on. So, I've been a huge fan of the IFA. I feel just a debt of gratitude to the organization because you guys helped me get started when I was launching my brand. I knew nothing about franchising. And yes, I did hire a franchise consulting firm. I hired the iFranchise Group, and Mark and the guys did a great job. Yep. But still, when you're starting out, you don't know what you don't know. And to be able to rub elbows with folks that are been involved in the industry and the generosity of the industry, which I know we're going to talk about, on how generous even direct competitors are. So much to cover. I'm curious though, I never found out from you, like, how did you get involved in franchising? I don't know the genesis of how you got here.
Listen, I love that question because I ask that of everybody all the time, right? Everybody wonders how we all got involved in franchising. Everybody has a different story and a different path as to how they got involved. So for me, I was bit by the political bug when I graduated from Northeastern undergrad, with a BS in political science, literally a BS, right? And was like, geez, I want to become a lobbyist, and I found a program at the George Washington University, political management, and graduate school political management, I should say. Okay. So I applied, got in, moved to DC, was in graduate school, and started working on Capitol Hill briefly. And then kind of like with franchising, somebody in my class was like, hey, my wife works at the Chemical Manufacturers Association. They're always looking for people there. And I didn't really know much about the association world. Got involved, at the Chemical Manufacturers Association. My background, when I came to DC was government relations and ended up doing state government relations and issues management. And then huge network of folks, just like within franchising, and then ended up moving over to what is now called the Retail Industry Leaders Association, which is really the association for Walmart, but all the other big box retailers. Okay. Was doing state government relations work there and issues management as well. And while I was there, sat on a coalition with a number of other folks like myself at other trade associations. And there was a woman who was part of this group that we get together once a month, and she used to head up state government relations for the IFA. And she was always talking about how she was spending all of her time in Iowa. And the rest of us, we were like, what the heck are you doing in Iowa? And what is this franchise bill she was always talking about? And at the time I was like, IFA franchising, what is it, McDonald's, and right. And then she courted me to move over to IFA. They were creating a new position, a manager of grassroots and political education. And that was something that always interested me. So moved over to IFA at the time. Matt Shea was the VP of government relations. Don DeBolt was our CEO. So made the move over to IFA and was doing federal lobbying as well, and kind of created and restarted, if you will, our lobby day, our big fly-in where we bring members in to bring them up on Capitol Hill and educate the members of Congress and the 22-year-old kids who are really running the country, right, about the benefits of the business format franchise model, because again, nobody really understands it, right? And they still don't, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And was doing that for almost the first 2 years I was here. Then got just totally fed up with lobbying, but fell in love with franchising, and an opportunity came up for me to move over to the membership side. And, within the association world, you kind of, especially if you're a lobbyist, you kind of move every 3.5 to 5 years, and you go where the hot issues are. I knew I would be totally changing my career path, and didn't think I'd be, hanging my hat here for, nearly 25 years now. But again, just really fell in love with working with entrepreneurs, founders of brands. But it's also, within our franchisor membership, it's so diverse because you've got these small startup brands like you were at one time
Right.
with I9. But then people, as they mature all the way up the ladder to what I refer to as the legacy brands, Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's, so on and so forth. And IFA was founded by Bill Rosenberg, the founder of Dunkin' Donuts. And he always used to say, and I had the pleasure of knowing him my first 3 years of being here at IFA, he would tell the story at the convention, how he and other founders were sitting around a table up in Chicago, and he stood up and threw $100 down on the table and let's start this bleepity bleep, association. And here we are, nearly 60 years later. Listen, I wake up every day. I still love my job. I love what I do. I love working with our members. It's still challenging, but it's the mission of IFA has never changed. We protect, enhance, and promote franchising day in and day out. And that is what we do for you, for all of our members, so they could all continue to grow and thrive through this awesome business model that was created way back when, called franchising, right? And it's a great way for people to realize the American dream, as a franchisee, but also as a franchisor as well. And then even as a supplier, our members, we all call it the franchise family, for a reason. And not because we tend to spend more time with our franchise family than we do with our own family or friends, or at least me, here in the DC area. But there's always a ton of conferences, right? A ton of meetings,
Right.
A ton of expos. And again, I tend to be on the road a fair amount, but it's also a relationship business, right? Franchising is a relationship business. And even like you said earlier, when you entered into franchising, yes, you utilized iFranchise Group to turn you into a franchise. But then, all of a sudden you're a franchisor. You've got to comfortably start wearing that hat,
Right,
and realize that that's the business you're in now. You're in the franchise business, but that's why people get involved in IFA, because they have to continue to grow and learn and understand what best practices are. And yes, there are competitors within the 300 verticals that franchise, but franchising is franchising. It's all the same generally. And yes, you have competitors, but even in the non-competitive verticals, you could still learn from your peers in those verticals, because whether it's franchise development, franchise relations, franchise operations, it's all the same. And you're still going to learn from people who've been up the ladder before you. And there's no reason to recreate the wheel. I tell people all the time, every issue that has occurred in franchising has already occurred for the most part. And there are plenty of people out there who love to give back to people coming up the ladder behind them, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think that founders, when they first franchise their concept, they don't really understand what their real day-to-day looks like what they really need to do as a founder. Because if you go to a franchise consulting firm and we get set up, and like I said, we use the iFranchise Group and got the pretty brochures on selling franchises and had the franchise development website and have all the operations manual binders stacked up on my bookshelf behind me, all ready to start selling franchises and growing. But we really don't know what to do every single day. So first of all, how many members are there of franchise brands are there in the IFA right now?
Right now, we have about 1,200 franchise brands. We have about 600 supplier members and about 10,000 franchisees that fall under our membership. And then we have within our Franchise Action Network, which is our grassroots lobbying, part of our government relations team, we have close to 100,000 franchisees, but they just want to be informed, everything that we're doing on the legislative front. And those numbers really jumped during the pandemic because people were starved for information. Our government relations team really created the PPP funds. That was something that, Ron Feldman, who's, I know you mentioned Ron was on your podcast. Ron was instrumental in helping create that and keeping it somewhat simplified, but we basically explained to the powers that be, the government here in DC, that if you basically give people money to protect jobs, it will end up costing overall, it'll end up costing the US government less in the long run, because people will not lose their jobs. And we wrote franchising into it. So it was really easy for franchisees and franchisors to receive PPP money, EIDL, and other things regarding the CARES Act. And that was in direct response to, our government relations team and some of our volunteer stellar leaders who helped kind of explain that issue and kind of crunch numbers. And it paid off just stellar for all of our members and kept them above water. They were able to, basically hold on to their employees, and we helped get everybody through the pandemic. And again, that's that's what we do day in and day out. We protect, the interests of the franchising community at the federal, state, and regulatory side day in and day out, so you all can continue to grow and thrive through the business format franchise model.
One of the things that I've heard about as I talk to some of the franchise experts throughout the industry is the surprise of post-COVID. Nobody saw this coming, where franchising was going to have like this new resurgence of growth. Nobody saw this coming. Why do you think there's been so much of a gravitational pull towards people wanting to own a franchise now versus before the COVID?
That's an awesome question. And I'll just give you obviously my perspective on it. I mean, I always tell people I don't consider myself a franchise expert, but I've got all this useless knowledge up here about franchising, and people always say, God, that was very helpful. But from my vantage point, Frank, it just seems to me that a lot of people either decided that during COVID, they were either working from home or they didn't have to do that long commute anymore. And they're like, gosh, I should really, kind of be my own boss. I should own my own business. Or people, they've always thought about doing it, but because of COVID, I think it really kind of helped people really kind of take that leap. Whereas in the past, they may have kind of held back a little bit. And I think that's where we've seen a huge uptick. And I've heard this at just about every meeting I've been to this fall, that it's a lot more expensive to get access to money, right? I mean, and that is starting to kind of cause some issues out there, especially for that first time potential franchisee. The unique thing about franchising is, and even during the Great Recession of the mid to late 2000s, where as an association, we were always keeping our head about 2% above where my peers at other associations that are reliant on just one industry. And it could just be the restaurant industry or the hotel industry or the retail industry. But, of course, we have people in those verticals that happen to franchise, but where we even see growth even today is with that multi-unit franchisee, or even that stellar franchisee who's looking to diversify and either add additional units under their existing brand. But now there's that new term that came up in the past year, at least for me, MUMBO, multi-unit, multi-branded operator, right? And these folks have a great relationship with their banks, and they're able to get access to capital and expand and grow. So I think even right now, though, I've been hearing from my dev friends that it's taking a lot longer to close on some deals with people in their pipeline because it costs more to get that access to money, right?
Right. You get them across the finish line.
Exactly. But there's still ongoing growth within those folks that are already existing franchisees, again, wanting to expand, into either other markets, whether it's going from food to non-food, and I'm starting to see a lot of that now because of, various issues, whether it's in California with the FAST Act or just, NLRB and other things. But no matter what, at least in my tenure, even though things might slow down a little bit, there is always still continued growth, whether it's on the FranDev side or with people entering into franchising as franchisees, or even people wanting to franchise their business as well. And that's always ongoing.
I kind of feel like we're in this new golden age. We're going to look back and say this period of time was a golden age in franchising again. At the same time, I also, I believe in the phrase, nothing is ever as good as it seems and nothing is ever as bad as it seems. So let's talk about, the flip side of this potential. We're in this golden age that our model is also potentially being threatened. So
100%.
So what are your thoughts on, and we should expand, what exactly do I mean by the threat of our model?
Exactly. And listen, excellent question. And I will say, when I came on board here at IFA, we had like less than 1,000 people attending our annual convention. We had less than 1,000 franchisor members. And really from late 1999, almost continuously up through the Great Recession, really, franchising just jumped. We reached 1,000 plus members. We had well over 1,000 people attending. Every year, the numbers kept going up across the board. Every year, even to this day, they keep going up. But one thing that we noticed in our board, we are, I always like to say we're the stewards of the organization. IFA belongs to its dues paying members. We are a nonprofit trade association. Without getting into too much detail, but we're a 501c6 because we are a lobby shop, but we also have a 501c3 component, which is the IFA Foundation, but we are a nonprofit organization. But the business model has been under more of a direct threat in the past 10 years than it has, in the past 60 years. And really that's because, again, the lawmakers, right, whether it's federal, state, or regulatory side, people don't understand franchising. They don't understand that franchisees are owner operators. They are responsible for hiring and firing people to the extent, setting wages for their employees. They are running that business. And, it's funny because just this past weekend was Shop Local Businesses, and, that's all sponsored by American Express, right?
Right.
We've been trying for years to get them to recognize that franchisees are small business people, that they are local to the community.
Totally.
And they just, unfortunately, that they don't recognize that. And it's unfortunate because we all know that the majority of franchisees out there are mom and pops, and they live in the community. They sponsor the little league teams. Their kids go to school with my kids, with their, they are part of that local community across the country. And at the end of the day, so many folks in franchising who have entered into franchising, they've all worked in corporate America, let's say, or they're coming out of, serving our country. And of course we have our VetFran program, and our members provide benefits to qualified veterans to enter into franchising, whether it's reducing the franchise fee or not including the franchise fee at all for qualified veterans. But it's a great way, again, to get people involved into owning their own business, being their own bosses. But again, you're going into business for yourself, but not by yourself. That's the power of the franchise model. You've got not only the support of the franchisor and the proven system that they've created, but you have the support of all the other franchisees in the system, and you're not going it alone. Yeah, you could open up your own pizza shop. Chances are you may or may not be as successful had you invested in a franchise concept. And again, it's because you're investing in a proven system. That founder, they did all the homework, and they had the ups and downs with with the success or the failures, what worked, what didn't work. And then they fine-tuned it and decided, to grow and expand using someone else's capital. And that's why they enter into franchising. Yes, as a franchisor, you still control, the secret sauce, you control the brand, and the franchisee has to follow the rules.
Right.
But at the end of the day, that franchisee is the owner operator of that business for as long as the agreement, whether it's 10 years, let's say. But at the end of the day, really, from my vantage point, from what I've seen, is you've got the unions, primarily the SEIU, the Service Employees Union, and they're smart. I mean, they have a heck of a lot more money than we do, but their coffers are starting to dwindle, and they are going after the gig economy. So Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, but the way they've crafted their message and the legislation that they've been able to get folks to introduce on their behalf pulls in the business format franchise model. And of course, they're going after kind of the low-hanging fruit, whether it's McDonald's, but their plans are to go after not just the restaurant segment, but all the other segments within franchising. So we have to stay 3 or 4 steps ahead. And obviously, if you look at California, and that's where they set their sights on first, and we were able to go in there. It could have been extremely costly after the FAST Act was introduced and signed, but we were able to collect enough signatures to get it to the in California, they have the proposition, where basically you would have been taken to the voters, but then we would have had to have spent millions of dollars basically running ads promoting why people should or should not vote for, whatever the prop would have been, prop whatever. And there would have been no guarantee that we would have succeeded. At the end of the day, a lot of deals were made, and we were able to get the joint employer piece removed from that. And again, the joint employer is, everybody thinks that, basically it would turn franchisees almost into middle managers, because franchisors would be considered joint employers with their franchisees. And we know, as a franchisor, you are not involved in anything having to do with HR related to your franchisees. It's up to your franchisee to find health insurance for them, their families, or even their employees. It's up to them to provide various benefits for their employees. The franchisor has nothing to do with that. If joint employer were to pass, and now the NLRB, they came out with their ruling. So we are encouraging everybody, if they haven't done it, to make sure, and we have all of this within IFA. It's very simple, and I could share this with you after the fact, but we're encouraging our members through our Franchise Action Network, our grassroots lobbying. It's all on the IFA website to, basically you just plug in your zip code where you live, and then it generates a letter directly to your member of Congress, both on the House and Senate side. We have to let them know that the business format franchise model is not broken, and franchisors, and it takes effect December 26th. But, listen, we filed suit. The SEIU has filed suit. I believe, and I'm not an attorney, but it's my understanding that this will probably end up with the Supreme Court at some point. But it's just, in my eyes, this is such a colossal waste of time, because franchising, as we all know, yes, not every concept is stellar. There's issues within franchising. Not every franchisee is successful. Not every franchisor is successful. But at the end of the day, I like to think the majority of IFA members, they're expected to abide by and adhere to the IFA Code of Ethics. And I like to think that our members are continually being educated through IFA on how to be the best franchisor, how to be the best franchisee, how to be the best supplier, on best practices, and how to continually drive and steer your ship in the right direction. But there's always going to be issues, whether it's franchise or in any other industry, where things aren't always perfect, right? But I like to think that at the end of the day, the majority of the folks involved in franchising are stellar and are always trying to do the right thing. We are always having to educate everybody on the business model, and that it's a huge cog in the economic wheel within the U.S. economy. Not only does it provide jobs, but it provides opportunities for people who never would have dreamed of owning their own business and realizing the American dream through franchising. Unfortunately, because it's been under more of a direct threat in the past 10 years, we are having to, and we are a small trade association. With our board, we've had to review, and our board reviewed, debated, discussed, and approved a restructuring of our dues model. So our our legacy brands, or what I refer to as the big boys and girls, are bearing more of a brunt of the cost of protecting the business model, whereas our startup and emerging brands, and as folks work their way up through the maturity ladder, aren't having to bear the brunt of it as much. Those are the folks that are entering into franchising really for the enhancement and the promotion that we provide. They want to learn how to be the best franchisor. They want to learn everything they need to know to be a successful franchisor. And they also want to, understand, how do we get leads? How do we find the best leads? How do we become royalty sufficient? And, these are things that through IFA and through our Certified Franchise Executive Program, through receiving our magazine, Franchising World, or our newsletters, that, our members are continually educating themselves on everything that they need to know to continue to be successful as a franchisor, or even as a franchisee, or again, as a supplier, what it means to do business in the franchise space. Even within our supplier membership, and again, I'm the liaison to the supplier board and the supplier board's executive committee, but our members, our franchisor and franchisee members, like to do business with people who support the association, but they also like to do business with people who understand franchising and understand the model and the relationship, because it helps that vendor, that supplier, work with the franchisor and their franchisee regardless of what that supplier's widget is, whether they're wanting to do business just with the franchisor or just with the franchisee, if they understand franchising, it just makes things a lot easier. And then in many cases, they help to continually educate and provide that franchise system and their franchisees with thought leadership at the end of the day, because that's what it's all about within franchising. And again, whether you're a franchisor or franchisee or supplier, within our membership, our members are always giving back to people coming up the ladder behind them, like I said earlier. And it's all about thought leadership, and people love to just continually educate, as you do now, Frank. I mean,
yeah.
You're one of those folks now who are giving back because franchising has been very good to you and continues to be good to you. And you're now helping educate all those folks. And I tell people all the time who are entering into franchising, I'm like, you'll be the chair of IFA someday. How could I be? Because we can only grow and thrive if we have stellar volunteer leaders. And I'm always trying to cultivate volunteer leaders within our membership, because that's how we continue to grow and thrive. We have to have those volunteer leaders. And if we don't, then the trade association, as we know, it's dead.
Right.
It won't continue to grow. When I came here and was working in government relations, within about a week's time, I realized I'm going to be extremely bored. All we focused on was franchise relationship legislation. There was nothing at the federal side. Iowa had happened. We were in the process of trying to get it amended, which we did. But then, we did have a federal bill. But then as I moved over to membership, things started just happening more and more and more. And we are really focused more heavily on government relations now, because we have to be, and our members need us to be. And that is the primary focus, is to continually protect the model, but we are also continually educating members. As IFA has matured and evolved over the years, we are not directly in the Fran Dev business. We are not a broker network. We have broker networks as members. We have some individual brokers who are members, but we do indirectly promote franchising day in, day out. We promote our members on our website. We're constantly getting unique individual visitors each day and each month to our website. We still have a very long-standing relationship with the folks that produce the expos that we directly sponsor, and it's MFE Expositions, and there's 4 shows coming up in 2024, and our members receive a discount to exhibit at these shows. It's funny, as long as I've been here, people are like, oh, expos are dying. Now, early on, it was because,
the portals.
When Al Gore invented the World Wide Web, and everybody was like, oh my God, websites. Websites are going to destroy franchise expos. Well, listen, there's a lot of web portals out there. Franchise.org is a web portal.
Right.
And even COVID kind of hit the pause button on expos. And we're still coming out of that a little bit. But expos are still a great way for people to find a lead, especially with emerging brands. It's kind of like they're coming out. It's like, yes, we are a new franchisor on the block, and it's still an important place to grow. But a lot of folks are using brokers now, and that's a whole nother issue out there, because the FTC was looking at regulating that. But now it's my understanding that they're taking a step back, because they don't, even though they brought this issue to the table, they're taking a step back now, because I guess, looking at it from a consumer standpoint, they're not getting a lot of complaints from consumers, but that's still kind of an ongoing issue. And even within franchising, our members, franchisors, they kind of have a love-hate relationship with the brokers or with these franchise sales organizations, the FSOs. But yet it's helped so many of our members get up to over 100 units, so they will keep them, on board as kind of like a, even though they still have their in-house Fran Dev team, they will still utilize the broker networks, or the referral networks, as they're kind of referred to today. And people are still getting a lot of deals out of the referral networks and the brokers that play with them. I jokingly tell people, I'm glad I'm not on the government relations team now. I'd be really busy. I'd love, it would be challenging and fun, but it's constantly ongoing now. And we have a stellar team here led by Mike Lehman, and he's got a lot of folks that have been here for a long time. We've added some new folks, but we also have a very active political action committee. And, at the end of the day, democracy is democracy, but I hate to say it, we are always contributing to both sides of the aisle. I mean, at the end of the day, we are a nonpartisan organization, but I always like to say that, like with any business group, not that we lean to the right or we don't lean to the right, but we have to at least contribute to folks on both sides of the aisle,
Right.
because we want to make sure that when it comes time for a vote in Congress, that we have people on both sides. I only contribute $1 a day to our PAC because we have such a powerful PAC. That's why we were able to get, the PPP funds and the CARES Act taken care of. And we were able to get franchising written into that legislation because we have a seat at the table. But I hate to say we have to buy that seat at the table at the end of the day. But
Right.
that's how our great democracy works here in the United States, right? I say that jokingly, but you know what I mean.
No, I hear you, Paul. The other kind of misconception I felt years ago with the IFA was that people thought it was only for franchisors, and it's not. You're the voice of franchising. And I think the IFA has done a really good job of really getting franchisees more involved in the organization.
100%, Frank.
Wouldn't you agree?
And listen, I mean, when IFA was founded, it was a franchisor-only organization. But then as franchising matured and evolved, in the early 90s, and I give the credit to the IFA board at the time, they realized this, and they were like, we need to include franchisees in IFA. They have to have a seat at the table.
Absolutely.
Listen, some of our members at the time were not happy about it. And we lost some members at the time, but it was the right thing to do, and it was the best thing to do. And even today, we have technically Dave Humphreys, the chairman of IFA, is a franchisee. We've had franchisees over the years as chairman of IFA or chairwomen, but we also have our board is made up of franchisors, franchisees, and suppliers. Now, suppliers can't chair the IFA, franchisors and franchisees can, but we have stellar franchisees that are involved in IFA. And that is who, when it comes to a grassroots lobbying,
yes,
that is who legislators want to hear from, because franchisees are the ones that are creating jobs. They're the voting folks back in the district, and their employees are the ones who vote. Now, so is the franchisor, right? Don't get me wrong. I mean, as a franchisor, you're employing people, but in some respects, franchisees, especially multi-unit, multi-branded franchisees, employ more people and create more jobs than most franchisors.
That's
right?
true. That is true.
And they have a more powerful voice than anyone within the franchising family.
In order to really be the voice of franchising, you have to have both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you can't be, at the end of the day, for us to be the true voice of franchising, yes, we are the voice of everybody involved. And, it's always referred to as the three-legged stool, if you will. And you can't have a well-balanced stool if you don't have the franchisor, franchisee, and supplier. And at the end of the day, it all really, the true essence of IFA's membership is the true essence of the franchise relationship. You cannot have a strong, stellar franchise entity, franchise business as a franchisor if you don't have franchisees in the pipeline, stellar franchisees in the system, but then also really good vendors that are playing with you and helping to support you as the franchisor, but also helping to provide benefits and services to your franchisees. I mean, I always tell people the franchise model and the association model is very similar. You've got IFA and all of its members, and you've got I-9 or McDonald's and all of their franchisees, but they also have vendors, and they're also doing conferences, annual conferences, just like we are,
right.
In some respects, mature brands, or at least brands that are royalty sufficient, right? They're able to have boots on the ground and people that are meeting with those franchisees, a few times a year. And it's very hard for, me here in DC to get out. And, we don't have a field ops team necessarily, but we do, because we have our volunteer leaders. And I always like to say, these are the people on the membership committee or on the franchise relations committee, and they're stellar volunteer leaders, even folks like you, Frank, right? That are always out there promoting IFA or meeting with our members, even more so than I am sometimes. So those are really kind of like, those are our field ops.
Yeah.
That's our field ops team, if you will. And it helps to continue to just promote franchising, and it helps us be the voice of franchising. But again, I am always, and my team, we always provide the concierge service to our members. We're the first point of entry for all of our members, people who are entering into IFA or even entering into franchising. And then as they get to know other folks within IFA, or they get to understand how IFA operates, then usually, year 3, year 2 to year 3, they want to start giving back. They want to serve on a committee. They want to speak at events, and then they want to get into leadership roles. So I am always cultivating new blood, right?
Right.
And I always tell people, you're going to be so sorry, be careful about what you ask for, because if you want to get more involved, trust me, I'm always looking for fresh blood.
There's a place for you. Paul, I want to get your thoughts on just, the savviness now of the multi-unit franchise owner that really has evolved so much of the past.
Gosh, yes.
Right?
And I will tell you, if I knew then what I know now, I would probably enter into franchising as a franchisee with my goals of being a multi-unit, multi-branded franchisee. My wife would kill me if I came home and said, guess what? I've invested in XYZ franchise.
By the way, that happens, as we know. I have had that happen many times. Discovery Day, where the wife didn't know I just bought a franchise. I had no intentions of it. My husband wanted it, and I'm stuck with it.
Exactly. But I will tell you, I've seen so many people do so well as franchisees, and they've just done extremely well. And then they've invested in that one concept because for whatever reason, they've realized how powerful franchising is, whether it's hearing stuff from us or just hearing stuff within this whole cottage industry that's built up around franchising. But, of course, we're always promoting the franchise model. We're contacted by local national media on a daily, weekly basis. We're always out there. Our CEO, Matt Haller, always out there promoting franchising. We have our program out there promoting the business model continuously. And so people are always learning about franchising. Mm-hmm. And that's how they enter into it. Because again, it's like people don't understand it. They don't know that, God, I didn't realize, I can't begin to tell you. Let me take a quick step back. Sure. How many times, we have new employees here at IFA and they're like, oh my God, they look at you, and we still print the franchise opportunities guide. It's the yellow pages of franchising. And they're like, I didn't realize all of these folks franchise. Or early on in my career, even today, right. Whenever we're driving anywhere in the US, I'm like, that's a member. My kids are always like, Dad, shut up. We understand everybody franchises, but listen, it's a great way for folks to grow and expand using somebody else's capital, but then also being able to provide as a franchisee opportunities to grow and thrive. So within franchising, you're always going to have those folks that are just happy, having that one location.
Right.
But then when they realize how well they're doing, they may want to, one sign I always see, a sign of a strong, and this is just my perspective, a sign of a strong franchise system is how many franchisees within that system decided to invest an additional unit or 2 or 3, right?
Yes.
That's a sign of a really stellar franchise system, I think. Mm-hmm. But then you've got those folks because they realize how well they're doing financially, and they've decided that they want to start diversifying, and they start investing in other brands. And it always tends to be in the food segment or in the hotel segment. Or I always see, there's always multi-unit franchisees in the hotel segment, but then they want to start diversifying, and it always tends to be in the food segment. And similarly, you've got those multi-unit franchisees, multi-branded franchisees, because they've done well, who start diversifying. I've heard this time and time again. They have 1 or 2 or 3 locations in their state. I'll just say Virginia, because that's where I live. And then let's say there's something that might be affecting the economy there, and they realize, if I had locations in other parts of the country that are doing really well right now, where there's a lot of growth, I want to take advantage of that. So that's when they start to look at investing, whether it's with their brand or other brands in other parts of the country. So, they want to protect their interests, right? Things might not be doing well in California, but they are focused heavily now on expanding outside California. And it all has to do with, again, we were able to go in and remove the joint employer from the FAST Act. Mm-hmm. It's a lesser of two evils. Yes, they were going to have to pay $20 an hour and more in salary, but we were able to get the joint employer removed from it. Lesser of two evils. Now, easy, obviously it's easy for me to say, but franchisors who are based there, let's say, they are heavily focused on expanding outside of California. And that's just to obviously benefit as a franchisor, but also their franchisees in that state are going to have to bear the brunt, and consumers are going to have to bear the brunt. There's no such thing as a free lunch. And if it's going to cost more to hire people, then either things are going to be automated, and they're going to be automated quickly, right? Mm-hmm. And ultimately it could have a reverse effect, because yes, people might think they're going to get paid $20 an hour to flip hamburgers. At the end of the day, and I know that I'm sure a lot of brands are looking at automating certain things so they don't have to employ
people. Right. Well, and consumer price is just going to go up automatically anyway.
Well, exactly.
Consumers pay
that's exactly
the brunt of it.
But I will say, I continue to see massive growth, especially on folks that have become successful franchisees. They know how successful they've become because of the franchising. Yeah, they always might have issues with franchisors. It's a relationship issue. I mean, I heard this years ago when I started IFA. The franchise relationship is like a marriage. In fact, it lasts longer than most marriages than most marriages do. Listen, we always believe in mediation. We don't believe in litigation, but as much as I hate to say, there's always litigation within franchise.
Unfortunately, it's a rite of passage.
It just is, but that could be said for within any industry, but franchising is very unique because you've had this, it's a relationship, a true relationship model. It's based on a relationship model. But at the end of the day, right now, it might be more challenging because of inflation and because interest rates are high. So it's costing more to get that loan, whether it's an SBA or whatever. But still, I know folks in the lending space who have been doing extremely well the past year. That said, there's got to be franchisees out there who they're ultimately working with, who are doing well. And it's not just those existing franchisees, whether they're single or multi-unit, or single soon to be multi-unit soon to be multi-unit, multi-branded. There's still people that if they have a good relationship with their local bank, they're going to be able to get funding, or they're going to find their way to the folks within our supplier membership under the financial umbrella, right? And I have to be fair to all of our members, so I don't want to focus on one person under the finance umbrella, but there's quite a few out there that are a great resource for people if you're a first-time franchisee. And listen, at the end of the day, most banks, from my vantage point, if you've never operated a business before, if you've never owned a business before, they might be more willing to sign off on that loan because you're part of a franchise, especially if it's a proven system. Maybe if it's a true startup, I don't know. From my vantage point, I would have to think there might be some issues there. But at the end of the day, I think even though I'm hearing from my friends on the FranDev side that it's taken a little bit longer to close on deals, they're still closing on deals. It's just taking longer because it's just the way things are right now. And I keep hearing from folks that the other shoe is going to drop. I'm just not seeing it yet. I am not seeing that. I mean, our members are renewing because of our business, our due structure on the franchisor side. It's based on your gross U.S. system-wide sales volume of your franchised units. So as you grow, it's like the royalty stream, right?
Sure.
Same model. It was because we were created by franchisors, right? As that franchisor grows and their system grows, their dues to IFA will go up. It's not because of me, but it's because of everything. Again, I'm biased, but we are continually providing stellar value, and we must be, because our members are renewing and they're paying a lot more than they were, and some are paying a lot more, or some are more than happy to continue to pay more as they grow. So franchisors are continually growing. Our members are continually growing. And I like to think IFA has something to do with that, right?
Sure. Paul, is there, I'm curious, is there a trend that you're seeing in a type of industry or type of business that you're seeing more membership, new members?
That is an awesome question.
Well, thank you.
And, and if I could quickly say, not to kind of a quick sidebar, but whenever I'm on a plane or talking to friends and, and they're like, franchising, oh, what's a hot franchise? And I'm like, if I knew that, I wouldn't be working for a nonprofit trade association. I'd be investing in and becoming a franchisee of that hot concept. And I always tell people, you shouldn't be asking yourself, what's the hot concept? You should be asking yourself what you're passionate about. And I'm old school. Take a legal pad of paper, jot down all your passions. And I guarantee you, go to the IFA website, look at all of our members and the categories they place themselves under, and you will most likely find a franchise that meets your passion. Because again, you know this, Frank, franchising as a franchisee, it's still challenging and it's still very hard. You still have to put in a lot of hours to be a successful franchisee, especially if you're the owner operator, right? The owner operator, you have to be doing something that you're passionate about, because you're still putting a lot of sweat equity into making that a successful business as a franchisee. So with that said, right now, the trends that I'm seeing, I'm still waiting for the federal government to decide to decriminalize marijuana. And once they decriminalize marijuana, I know that there are a number of folks out there. Well, we even have members currently, that are in the CBD space or in the kind of the marijuana space, right? But once it is decriminalized by the federal government, I know that that is going to be a huge trend. There's a lot of mom and pops out there, but there's a few folks that are franchising, but it's not quite, I'm kind of just watching that. I'm not calling it a trend yet because the federal government, it's still a controlled substance. Okay. Even though states have changed things, it's still federally a controlled substance. I will say that it's always still in the service related, but also in the food space. I'm still seeing a lot of, what I just refer to as the poke bowls, or it shocks me how, the gourmet burgers are still popping up, or sandwich franchises are still popping up, or kind of specialty pizza, if you will. From my vantage point, I'm not seeing anything right now that is kind of what I refer to as a hot trend. And what I mean by hot is we've got like 3 or 4 members that have joined under a specific vertical that are kind of new to franchising. But right now, it's like it's really interesting. There's nothing that I'm seeing that I would say, wow, this is like a kind of a trend, or even a mini trend, really.
So the tide is rising all boats right now.
But I'll tell you that. What I hear from CEOs and franchisees, and this is going to continue, it's labor. Labor is still a big issue.
Getting labor.
It is impossible. Everybody's having that issue. Franchisees are having that issue. Some franchise locations have to close like on a Wednesday, because they don't have enough employees, right? That is still just a big issue. And, with an IFA, we always try to focus on, the macro, anything that's affecting all of franchising, not just specific, verticals. But at the end of the day, the food segment is still the largest segment within franchising, even within our membership, even though that's diversified greatly over the years in my tenure as well. It's supply chain, and also comes to, again, food. It's just food safety issues that's keeping folks up. Our members who are heavily reliant on people having disposable income, and this is at the local store marketing side, right? Making sure that folks are continuing to patronize franchisees' locations. People are always concerned about that. And because we're reliant on, there's 300 different verticals that happen to utilize a business format franchise model, especially, and I say this especially to supplier prospects, or even when I'm reiterating how to maximize your value as a supplier. We're a one-stop shop for 300 different industries at franchise. So if you're only focused on one industry within franchising, you got to spend some time to take your widget so you could apply that to the other 299 verticals. But then also it's on the legislative front. 100%. It's this joint employer issue. We need everybody in franchising, whether you're a member or not, have folks reach out to me, and I'll put them in touch with our government relations team, or I'll direct them to the website where they could go to our grassroots, Franchise Action Network, to fill out a form letter, to your member of Congress to say, leave franchising alone. It's not broken, and also to the folks at the FTC. And of course, it's also the franchise rule. They're working on that, and there's only so much they'll listen to the IFA staff lobbyists, but they really need to hear from, the folks that are really going to be affected by all this negative onerous, legislation at the end of the day.
Sure.
Franchising is not broken, and it continues to provide awesome opportunities for people. It's a huge economic cog in the economic U.S. economy, and the economic wheel in the U.S. and of course globally. But if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right.
And things need to be tweaked. So that is right now, again, if I were a franchisor, I would be extremely concerned about the NLRB's ruling on joint employer, because we all know as a franchisor, that's going to force you to have to be a little bit more directly involved with your franchisees that you shouldn't have to be involved in, and your franchisee is not going to be too happy about that.
No.
And I'm obviously I'm making it sound more like the sky is falling. I don't want to make it sound like it's the death of franchising, but I'm trying to simplify, but also paint it with a brush that, this is a serious issue, and we need the help of the franchising community and the voice of the franchisee and the franchisor and the supplier. Because at the end of the day, by doing this, it's going to make it a hell of a lot easier for the SEIU to go in and unionize employees at all franchise locations. If you look at Starbucks, they don't franchise, right? They do internationally, but they don't franchise in the US. And it was fairly easy for the SEIU to go in there and unionize Starbucks. Now, they didn't unionize it at every single Starbucks, but they were able to do that. And that's what they are trying to ultimately do at the end of the day, because it'll help to increase their coffers, which have been dwindling. And that's what we're trying to prevent.
Sure. Paul, with that said, since we have an audience of emerging franchisors and potential franchisees that'll listen to the podcast, can you just let us know where they can get more information on the website? Where should they go?
100%. And thank you. Thank you for that, Frank. So IFA's website, franchise.org, and you can find everything you need there on our website, whether it's information about IFA and the benefits that are currently awarded to our members, whether you're a franchisor, franchisee, or even potential franchisee or a potential supplier. And then regarding everything that I've been discussing regarding what our government relations team is working on and the joint employer, you will find that on the website as well. And feel free to reach out to me directly, and I would be happy to continue to answer any questions anybody has about what was discussed, on this podcast today.
Sweet.
And then direct you to where you need to go to get the answers. And I would be, more than happy to do that. I do that on a daily, weekly basis.
Thank you, Paul.
And I love to do it.
Thank you. Well, I always finish with the tip jar, I call, because the franchise community is so generous, which we talked about right from the opening bell. So
yes.
Paul, I want to know, give me a piece of advice. If I'm an entrepreneur looking to franchise my concept, what's the one piece of advice you would give me?
Well, it's funny you should say that. Whenever anybody wants to franchise their concept, and I get calls like this, or I meet with people like this at expos, especially, I try to talk them out of franchising. And I say, listen, you got to realize you've got a pizza restaurant. Do you have at least 3 locations, 2 to 3? I do. Are the unit volume economics strong? They are. Well, then chances are you could start franchising, but you got to realize something. It's not cheap. And I always tell people franchising is very unique. You've got to either work with a packaging firm like you did, Frank, right? And I always tell people they're a member of IFA Supplier Forum. That's who I will only promote. But if you think, all you need is an attorney to draft your franchise disclosure document, you have the option of doing that. But at the end of the day, you can't just use your cousin who might be a business attorney or a real estate attorney, because I jokingly tell people, if you have a brain tumor, you're not going to go to a podiatrist. And same thing with franchising. You have to use a franchise attorney. You have to use somebody who understands franchising. It's very specific. And of course, there's the 14 registration states, and that's a whole nother mess. But again, I always tell people, you're no longer in the childcare business or the pizza business or the pet care business. You're going to be in the franchise business, and that is a totally different business. So that's why you join IFA, so you could learn from everybody who's been there before, and you will learn that. But then once you start franchising and you hang that shingle outside that, how do I sell that franchise? And that is a challenge for everybody. And you will have a lot of people out there supporting you along the way, but it is not easy. And yes, people will use the FSOs or they will use the brokers. But again, you've got to educate yourself on what that means and how that will benefit you or how it could be a challenge for you. As an emerging brand, you've got to become royalty sufficient. And what does that mean? It means you have enough money coming in from those royalty stream from your franchisees that you've brought on board to start really funding your franchise operations, paying for, maybe an in-house fran dev person or hiring somebody to focus on operations for you. And then you're truly a franchisor at that at that point, because I hear this time and time again. If you're a startup brand and you're using, an FSO, let's say, and I'm not saying this happens all the time, but if they sell 100 units for you, how many of those units are open, right? If they all open immediately, a lot of that money might be going to pay off the FSO or pay off the brokers, and then you don't have the funds to then properly support those franchisees, within your system from the ops standpoint. And again, this is me speaking. I'm not saying that this happens holistically across the board within franchising, but it's just something I hear about all the time. Continue to do your due diligence. Listen to podcasts like this. Talk to people like Frank. Talk to people like me. I will put people in touch with other franchisors. Continue to educate yourself so you're making the right decisions and that you will put together the right franchise program so you have a stellar program and it continues to be stellar because of your involvement and building those relationships and continuing to build and foster those relationships. So then when you do work your way up the maturity ladder, you will start giving back to the people coming up behind you as a franchisor, also as a franchisee, or also as a supplier. Sure. I mean, I bring on a number of suppliers who are brand new to this space. They might have one franchisor or franchisee client, and that's how they end up coming to me, but they have to understand and learn about franchising as well. And they will do that through all of us in the franchise family, right?
Paul, that is great advice. That is fantastic. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being on the show. I am a proud second-time member now of the IFA.
I know.
The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is a proud member of the IFA. And I just want to thank you and your staff and everybody for the support you've given me over the years. And I look forward to seeing you at the IFA, which is coming up in
yes,
February.
our annual convention is in Phoenix, Arizona, February 17th through the 20th. And if anybody has any questions, they can reach out to me. If you've never been a member of IFA before, please reach out to me. I might be able to offer you a scholarship to cover the cost of your registration. And that's for first-time members who have never been to the convention. And that's really as a thank you to you, Frank, for giving me this opportunity. Okay.
Paul, thank you so much.
Now, of course, you're a two-time member now, and you're a founder who's done very well. So that offer I can't extend to you, my friend. Though I'd like to, but I can't. I apologize. Too many people looking over my shoulders. But there's an emerging franchisor boot camp. You are going to meet a lot of people who will educate you. I'm biased. It's the premier franchising event for the year.
It is the granddaddy of them all.
Plus attendees.
It is the granddaddy of them all. Absolutely.
So again, thank you for helping me promote that. I appreciate that.
Well,
and
Paul,
thank you for this opportunity to help just talk about what little I know and about franchising, but what I've learned over the years, seriously, I'm humble, but also just, to help promote what we do here. Cause a lot of people don't understand. They think we're a broker network. We're not IFPG. We're not FranServe. We're not that. They belong to us. We are a nonprofit trade association. We protect, enhance, and promote franchising day in, day out, but we can't do it without the stellar support of our members and especially, the stellar support through the membership dollars that people spend with us by joining IFA. You got to be a part of the country club to take advantage of the benefits that we offer, but also we can't protect franchising without the support of our members at the end of the day. So
yes, sir. Paul,
and I can't thank you enough for joining IFA again, my friend. But and you're like the poster child of somebody who entered into franchising, was extremely successful, and now you're continuing to give back, and you're the poster child of people I point to all the time. You want to see somebody who's successful? Look at Frank and look at what he's done.
Oh, well, Paul, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It took a village, but we did it.
Right, it does. And thank you, my friend, as always. And I look forward to, if anything, I look forward to seeing you in Phoenix in February.
I will see you then. All right, Paul.
All right,
thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye. Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.